General Bernard Montgomery was not known for his sense of humor. He interpreted statements with utmost seriousness, a fact that one American general learned in a rather unfortunate manner. Montgomery played a crucial role in the defeat of the Axis powers during World War II. His tactical genius was matched only by his considerable ego and a complete lack of diplomacy. Winston Churchill famously remarked that Montgomery was unbeatable in defeat and unbearable in victory. Born in 1887 in London, Bernard Law Montgomery, affectionately known as Monty, came from a notably strict and devout family. His father, Henry, served as a minister in the Church of Ireland, while his mother, Maud, was the daughter of a clergyman. However, Monty had no intention of following the religious path set by his parents. At the age of 2, his father was appointed Bishop of Tasmania, prompting the family to relocate to Australia. The demands of his father's position often left him absent for extended periods, leaving Monty and his 8 siblings under their mother's care. Overwhelmed by the challenges of raising a large family in an unfamiliar environment, their mother frequently neglected Monty and his siblings. When she did engage with them, it often resulted in severe punishments for what she perceived as disobedience. This harsh upbringing, coupled with constant conflicts with his mother, likely contributed to Monty's early propensity for aggression. He often targeted his smaller classmates, subjecting them to harsh and authoritarian games, including a particularly cruel incident where he compelled a group of boys to traverse a roof with their hands bound. Fortunately, Monty's difficult childhood in Australia concluded in 1901 when the family returned to London. The damage had already been inflicted. Monty had developed into a thoroughly disagreeable young man. Shortly thereafter, he enrolled in the Royal Military College Sandhurst, where even the disciplined officers of the British Army struggled to reform him. His behavior was so unruly and violent that his superiors nearly expelled him, a significant measure for the military to consider. Remarkably, Monty managed to adhere to orders just long enough to graduate from RMC Sandhurst at the age of 21, eager to engage in combat, regardless of the consequences. Not long after his graduation, Monty experienced combat in India, and due to his ferocity in battle, he achieved the rank of lieutenant. However, it was not until the onset of World War I that he truly made a name for himself. During the intense fighting at the First Battle of Ypres, Monty found himself in the sights of a sniper. He sustained a gunshot wound to his right lung and another to his knee, with few believing he would survive. The attending physicians were so convinced of his impending death that the army even prepared his grave. Against all odds, Monty not only survived, but was also awarded the Distinguished Service Order Medal for his courageous leadership. After recuperating in 1915, he returned to the front lines, continuing to excel and ultimately rising to the rank of staff officer by the time the Allies achieved victory. However, this victory came at a tremendous cost. In Montgomery's view, far too much blood had been shed. Having endured his mother's relentless beatings, Monty was no stranger to cruelty and brutality. Yet the profound horrors he witnessed during the war transformed him irrevocably. He felt that the generals on both sides exhibited a complete disregard for human life. Following his experiences in World War I, Montgomery discovered his true purpose in life. He perceived a lack of competence among the majority of the officers in his vicinity, which fueled his resolve to dedicate his life to military strategy. Recognizing that achieving any significant rank within the British Army required both education and a more favorable disposition, he understood that his absence of influential family ties and his difficulty in adhering to orders from superiors hindered his chances of entering Staff College, a crucial institution for those seeking high command in the British Army. However, a fortuitous invitation to play tennis brought him into contact with the Commander-in-Chief, Field Marshal Sir William Robertson. He made a sufficient impression on the commander to secure a place at Staff College. Once again, Monty set aside his pride long enough to graduate in 1921 as brigade major. Nevertheless, he soon found himself in a challenging predicament. Assigned to the 17th Infantry Brigade in Ireland, Monty was responsible for counterinsurgency operations against Irish nationalists. Confronted with this untenable situation, he relinquished any thoughts of mercy or pacifism. Ireland marked Monty's first significant leadership role, and he quickly realized that he was not as formidable as he had believed. In May 1922, he led a considerable force into the town of Macroom in search of several missing British officers, hoping that his display of strength would persuade the IRA commander, Charlie Brown, to surrender the men. Brown deceived Monty into a trap by agreeing to negotiate outside the castle gates, while numerous IRA volunteers took up firing positions, completely encircling Monty and his troops. Brown granted him 10 minutes to vacate the town, leaving Monty with no option but to retreat. Unbeknownst to him, the IRA had already executed the missing British officers as a retribution for the horrific actions Monty had committed against them. In Ireland, Montgomery initiated a brutal, scorched earth campaign. Montgomery's attempts to cultivate a personal life were often overshadowed by his intense commitment to his career in the British Army, particularly when he was not engaged in the destruction of enemy properties. It was not until he reached his late 30s in 1925 that he found a semblance of romance. His first romantic interest was a 17-year-old named Betty Anderson. However, his notion of a romantic stroll along the beach involved sketching military strategies in the sand, which failed to impress her, leading to the rejection of his proposal. Subsequently, Montgomery encountered Elizabeth Carver, the widowed sister of a British Army officer, who, along with her 2 sons, integrated well into his life. For a time, it appeared that he had successfully established a family unit. His stepsons even expressed admiration for him, acknowledging the courage it took for him to marry their mother. A few years into their marriage, Montgomery and Carver welcomed a son named David. However, tragedy struck when they were vacationing in Burnham-on-Sea, and Carver suffered a mysterious insect bite that became severely infected, necessitating the amputation of her leg. Her health deteriorated further, leading to either sepsis or septicemia. In a heartbreaking turn of events, Montgomery could only hold his wife as she succumbed to her illness. Devastated by the loss, Montgomery resolved to immerse himself in his work following the funeral, relinquishing any aspirations for a conventional life and recommitting to the Army. His dedication was soon recognized with a promotion to Major General, and he was dispatched to Mandatory Palestine, seeking distance from the painful memories of his late wife. There he channeled his grief into suppressing the Great Palestinian Revolt, decisively quelling all opposition. Less than a year later, he returned to England, yearning for another opportunity to engage in conflict. A few months following his return to England, World War II erupted across Europe. Monty found himself back in France, serving with the 3rd Division. His leadership during the initial phases of the conflict proved to be of great significance. While other divisions in France began to entrench themselves for defense, Monty transformed the 3rd Division into the most proficient fighting unit west of the Rhine. He frequently mandated that training exercises be conducted at night under challenging conditions. Despite some complaints from his troops, his rigorous training regimen ultimately saved lives. By the time the war escalated, Monty's 3rd Division had already earned a reputation for being highly agile and adaptable. This quality would prove essential as France succumbed to the Axis powers. Monty's 3rd Division was strategically positioned to facilitate the British retreat at Dunkirk. During this initial deployment in France, some of Monty's idiosyncrasies became evident. Most notably, he adhered to a strict routine of retiring to bed at exactly 9:30 each night, regardless of artillery fire. Before retiring, he issued a singular command to his men. They were not to disturb him unless an emergency arose. By 1942, as the momentum shifted in favor of the Allies, Winston Churchill sought a new field commander for North Africa. Despite his reputation for being obstinate, Churchill selected Monty for the role. However, awaiting him in the Sahara was the formidable German Field Marshal, Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox. At his inaugural meeting in the desert with his officers, Monty made it abundantly clear that they would either defeat Rommel or perish in the attempt. Monty dedicated months to repelling Rommel's persistent offensives while preparing for a decisive battle. To his superiors, however, this behavior appeared as a sign of weakness. Back in England, Churchill called for decisive action, yet Monty dismissed these demands and focused on strengthening the 8th Army. In late October 1942, to the delight and relief of his superiors, Monty initiated the long-awaited counteroffensive. The Second Battle of El Alamein spanned 12 days and resulted in 13,500 casualties. Nevertheless, Monty achieved his victory, and more importantly, he had the chance to prove his critics wrong. He had just secured one of the Allies' most significant land victories since the onset of World War II. However, this triumph came at a cost. Monty's stepson, Dick Carver, was captured by the enemy during a reconnaissance mission. With the remnants of his family now in enemy hands, Monty exhausted all his resources and connections in a futile effort to rescue his stepson. Fortunately, fate smiled upon him. Carver managed to escape and returned to Monty just in time for Christmas. As Montgomery continued to achieve victory after victory against Rommel, his ego expanded significantly, becoming too large to accommodate within the Allies' camp. Upon his promotion to full general, he found himself collaborating with his American counterparts, George Patton and Omar Bradley. It was said that the three men often engaged in disputes reminiscent of schoolyard quarrels. Despite being challenging to work with, Monty possessed a peculiar, albeit dark, sense of humor. A photograph from 1944 captures him alongside his two dogs, a fox terrier named Hitler and a spaniel named Rommel. In many respects, Monty had both the Führer and Rommel under his control. He was characterized by his arrogance, unlikability, and boastfulness, yet he also exhibited a strangely literal demeanor. For instance, he placed a wager with U.S. General Walter Bedell Smith, asserting that he could seize the town of Sfax by mid-April 1943. In jest, Smith bet that if Montgomery succeeded, he would personally present him with a Boeing B-17. While Smith was clearly joking, Montgomery was serious. As planned, Montgomery captured Sfax in early April and immediately contacted Smith to claim his prize. Upon realizing that Montgomery was not jesting, Smith had to approach General Eisenhower, who reluctantly provided a fully staffed Boeing B-17 to Montgomery. In 1949, following the death of Montgomery's mother, he continued to harbor resentment towards her for her harsh parenting methods. The then 62-year-old Lord Montgomery opted not to attend his mother's funeral, citing a busy schedule. After World War II, Montgomery occupied several high-ranking positions, yet he never achieved the level of influence he desired, attributing this to his own negative demeanor. In the latter part of his life, Montgomery adopted controversial views that suggested he may have outlived his relevance, including vocal support for apartheid in South Africa and opposition to gay rights. He not only demanded discipline from his troops, but also held himself to the same standard. Throughout his life, he remained a teetotaler, a committed vegetarian, and a practicing Christian. Thus, it remains uncertain whether he found enjoyment in anything other than conflict during his 88 years. Thank you for watching History Empire Center. If you appreciate discovering compelling historical narratives, please like and subscribe to continue your exploration with us.